Welcome back to True Night Voices. Tonight everything might be quiet. Or not. Put on your headphones. Let's begin. Tonight, I'll tell you 3 true stories about people who lived alone and slowly realized they weren't entirely alone. Sounds in the night. Things moved without being touched. And sometimes, a stranger right inside the place they once called the safest. Turn off the lights and listen closely. I never thought something as simple as a drinking glass could make me lose sleep for months. My name is Ellie. I'm a sophomore at a small university in Oregon. The town is quiet, too quiet, some would say. Students here usually rent their own apartments, not dorm rooms. Rent is cheap, and most of us prefer the privacy. I lived alone in a tiny ground floor apartment, just 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a bathroom. Cozy, simple, and most importantly, mine. I loved living alone, not because I was introverted or antisocial, but because I liked being in control. I knew where everything was, nothing moved without my doing, and there were no weird roommate stories to tell. It was perfect. Until one night. It was a Wednesday, completely ordinary. I came home around 6 p.m., cooked a basic dinner, and spent most of the evening watching movies on my laptop. Nothing unusual. Before bed, I went through my usual nighttime routine. I was picking up a stray sock from the floor when I knelt down and happened to glance under my bed. That's when I saw a drinking glass. A clear glass tumbler, plain, no markings. It was laying sideways, pushed against the wall under the bed. I froze. It wasn't mine. I only owned 2 cups, 1 ceramic mug, and 1 plastic tumbler for water. I never bought glassware. I'm clumsy, and glass breaks too easily. I stared at it for a moment, my thoughts racing. Did someone leave it? But who? I haven't had anyone over in weeks. The silence in the room suddenly felt heavier. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I bought it without remembering. Maybe it had fallen out of a cabinet, somehow. I picked it up with a paper towel, set it on the kitchen counter, and went to bed. Or tried to. I couldn't stop thinking about that glass. The next morning, I checked all the windows. All locked. The door was locked too, with no signs of tampering. Still, I started noticing little things, small details that didn't sit right. One time, I was sure I had shut a kitchen cabinet, but it was slightly open the next morning. Another time, my shoes were not on the rack, but scattered near the door. And now, this glass sitting under my bed, clean and dry, like it had been placed there. It wasn't much, but the feeling in my gut, the one that whispers when something is off, was getting louder. I'm not paranoid. Or at least, I didn't think I was. That night, I ordered a mini security camera online, the kind that connects to your phone and has motion sensors. I set it up in the corner of my bedroom, facing the closet and the rest of the room. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted to be sure. If something weird was happening, I wanted proof. For 3 nights, nothing happened. Just shadows, soft lights, the occasional moth fluttering by the lens. Then came the 4th night. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. Not from a nightmare, not from any obvious sound, just an odd noise, like a soft click, wood tapping against wood. I sat up, barely breathing. I stared into the darkness of my room. Everything looked normal. I waited a few minutes, then lay back down. The next morning, I opened the camera app. At 3:16 a.m., the footage was still. Grainy night vision. Nothing unusual. Then, at 3:17, I saw it. The closet door shifted, just slightly. Then, a hand reached out, just a hand pressing softly on the inside of the door. I paused the footage. There was no mistaking it. Someone had been in my closet. I ran out of the apartment in a panic and called 911. Police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 officers checked the entire place. They found no one inside, but when they inspected the closet, they found something disturbing. Behind the clothes, there was an old vent panel, a large square cut into the drywall, secured loosely with screws. One of the officers tapped on the wall behind it and discovered a hollow spacer crawl area, part of an abandoned ventilation system that connected several units on the ground floor. It was big enough for a person to slip through. They suspected someone had been entering from another apartment, possibly an empty one, through the old vents. Maybe someone homeless, or worse, someone who had been watching me for some time. There was no way to know for sure. Whoever had been there was gone. I moved out 3 days later. I couldn't sleep in that apartment again, not after knowing that someone had been so close, for who knows how long, hiding in my closet, waiting. I still have the glass. I keep it in a plastic evidence bag, like some kind of morbid souvenir, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. Not every intruder kicks down the door. Some of them slip in, quiet, careful, calculating. And sometimes they leave behind something small, something you can almost ignore, like a glass under the bed. If you live alone, don't just check your locks. Check your closets, check beneath the bed, and never ignore the little things. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's outside your home, it's what's already inside. Mirrors don't lie, but sometimes they show things that were never meant to be seen. My name is Elise. I lived alone for the first time when I turned 34. It was a small rental house just outside Asheville, North Carolina, nestled near the edge of Pisgah Forest. The kind of place you might pass on a winding road without even noticing a single-story cottage with peeling green paint and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. It wasn't modern, it wasn't bright, but it felt peaceful, quiet. Exactly what I needed after the last 2 years of burnout and broken promises. The house came furnished with old wooden furniture, faded curtains, and strangely a large antique mirror bolted to the wall of the bedroom. Oval frame, dark walnut. The glass was slightly fogged, as if time had settled behind it. At first, I barely noticed it. By the time I did, it was too late. The first few days passed quietly. I unpacked, arranged my books, started a routine. Mornings with tea, evenings with music and open windows. The forest air was cool, the sunset soft and golden. But at night, something shifted. The mirror made the room feel off. Not haunted exactly, just wrong. I'd catch myself glancing at it too often. And every time I passed it, I had this weird sense like I was being watched. I told myself it was just nerves, city stress, leftover anxiety. But one night, that changed. It was a little after 3 a.m. I'd woken from a light sleep, thirsty. As I crossed the room toward the kitchen, something caught my eye. In the mirror, just for a split second, I saw a shape, a figure. Not mine. It stood slightly behind me, just outside the reflection's edge. Still, watching. I turned sharply. No one. Turned back. The mirror showed only me, tired, confused, heart beating too fast. I stood there a long time. Was it a dream? A trick of the light? But something about it felt too real, too deliberate. Over the next few nights, I started noticing little glitches. If I moved past the mirror quickly, the reflection would lag just half a second behind. Not always, not enough to prove anything, but enough that I started testing it. I'd record videos, wave my hand, snap my fingers. Most of the time, it was normal, but once, only once, I caught a delay. I showed the video to my friend Jonah, who works in digital film. He stared at it for a while, then said, "It's probably just a bad codec or frame drop." But I knew. It wasn't the camera. It was the mirror. Then came the dreams. In them, I was still in my room, but the reflection wasn't me. It was a woman. She looked a little like me, only thinner, paler, with long black hair and eyes that never blinked. She'd just stand there in the mirror, unmoving, until one night she raised her hand and waved. But in real life, I hadn't moved at all. It got worse. I started waking up paralyzed, trapped in my body, unable to move, speak, or scream. And always, I'd see her. Not in the room. In the mirror. She'd lean forward, pressing her face closer to the glass, her expression empty but aware, as if she was studying me, waiting for something. And once God, I swear this happened, she turned and walked away, inside the reflection, toward a place I couldn't see. Like the mirror was just a doorway. I contacted the property owner, an older woman named Lorraine. She was kind, if not a little hesitant. When I asked about the mirror, she went quiet. Then she said, "That piece belonged to my sister. She lived in the house before she passed. She used to say strange things about that mirror. Claimed it showed her things no one else could see. We tried removing it once. Every time, it ended up back on the wall. Eventually, we stopped trying." I asked how her sister passed. Lorraine didn't answer. She just said, "Some reflections aren't meant to be seen alone." I packed my bags. On my last night there, I covered the mirror with an old quilt, tucked the edges tight, and turned to walk away. And then behind me I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 soft taps from behind the quilted glass. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't turn around. I slept in the car that night, left before sunrise. That was 2 years ago. Sometimes I still dream of her, of the woman behind the mirror, the one who looked like me, but wasn't. I've never stayed in a room with a wall mirror since, and I never will. Next time you pass a mirror in the dark, don't rush. Take a moment, look closely. Just make sure that what's looking back is really you. Some furniture holds memories, some hold something else entirely. My name is Daniel. I'm a carpenter. Or I was. I used to restore antique furniture, refinish wood, mend joints, polish brass. I loved it. I loved the quiet rhythm of working with my hands, the smell of old oak, the sense of bringing something forgotten back to life. That was before the chair, before the job I wish I'd never taken. It started with a voicemail. "Hi, Daniel. This is Susan from Bell Hollow Estate. We're liquidating an old farmhouse, and there's a few pieces we'd like evaluated before auction, particularly a rocking chair, hand-carved. Looks like early 1900s. I almost didn't return the call. Rocking chairs weren't especially valuable, but work had been slow, and Bell Hollow was only an hour outside Nashville. I said yes. The farmhouse sat on the edge of a dense grove, surrounded by overgrown fields and dying fences. It hadn't been lived in for years. Inside was dust, lots of it, and silence. Susan met me in the foyer. She wore thick glasses and spoke in that clipped way people do when they're too tired to pretend they're not uncomfortable. "The chair's upstairs," she said. "Back bedroom." I found it in the farthest room at the end of the hall. The floor creaked under my boots as I stepped inside. And there it was. A rocking chair, simple but elegant, dark walnut, high back, hand-carved spindles shaped like vines wrapping around each other. A piece of craftsmanship, but more than that, it had presence. Like it had been waiting. It rocked slightly when I entered. Just a little. As if greeting me. I told myself it was the breeze, even though the windows were closed. I brought the chair back to my workshop. It looked like a restoration dream. Solid structure, only minor scratches, wood still healthy under layers of grime. But something about it unsettled me. For one thing, it always seemed to move. I'd leave it perfectly still, come back a few minutes later, and it'd be gently rocking. Not wildly, just moving. Slow, deliberate, like someone was sitting in it. I checked for drafts, leveled the floor. Nothing explained it. Then came the sounds. I live above my shop in a loft apartment. One night around 12:30 a.m., I woke to a sound I knew by heart. The low creak of wood shifting underweight. The chair. I walked down barefoot, each step colder than the last. The lights were off, but the chair was moving, rocking, back and forth. I turned the lights on. It stopped. I walked over. Nothing. No wind. No vibration. Just that heavy stillness you feel in old places. I reached out and touched the backrest. It was warm, like someone had just been sitting there. Over the next week, I started having dreams. In them, I was in the shop, late at night. The lights flickered. I'd hear the chair creaking behind me, but I couldn't turn around. Sometimes, I'd feel breath on the back of my neck. Other times, I'd see a shadow sitting in the chair, long arms, thin hands curled over the ends of the armrests, never moving, never speaking, just watching. During restoration, I flipped the chair over to work on the legs. That's when I saw it. Etched beneath the seat, almost hidden under layers of polish, was a single word. Mama. Not carved neatly, scratched in, like a child with a nail, jagged and raw. I sanded around it gently, trying to preserve the mark, and underneath it, I found something else. Tiny lines burned into the frame, too faint to read at first, but under a UV light, I could just make out the words. She won't get up. She just keeps rocking. She never sleeps. My hands went cold. I flipped the chair upright and stepped back. It didn't move. Not until I turned away. I called Susan, asked if she knew anything about the previous owners. She hesitated, then said, "The last people to live there were the Carsons. The mother, Eleanor, she lost her son during the war, never recovered. She used to sit in that chair by the window for hours, days even, just rocking, watching the trees. One night, the daughter came home and found her mother dead in the chair, eyes open, still rocking. I asked if anyone had ever tried to get rid of the chair. She said it had always come back. Auctioned, donated, even left at a dump once. Someone always found it, returned it. I couldn't sleep. It was past 2 a.m. I sat in the workshop, Lights off, just me in the chair. I wanted to know if it was real, if it meant something. I spoke to it. Who are you? Nothing. What do you want? Silence. Then movement. A slow, steady rock. The temperature dropped, my breath fogged. The rocking grew faster. And then I heard it. A whisper, right beside my ear. He never came home. I turned. No one. I looked back at the chair. It had stopped. But the indent on the cushion remained. Like someone was still sitting there. I sealed the chair in storage the next day, wrapped it in canvas, chained it inside a steel container. I've never touched it since. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear creaking from downstairs, but I don't go check anymore. Some things don't want to be restored. Some things just want to be left rocking. Old furniture carries more than just age. Sometimes it carries memory, loss, echoes. So next time you pass a rocking chair, and it starts to move just a little, ask yourself, is it just the wind? Or is someone, still sitting there? Tonight, I'll tell you 3 true stories about people who lived alone and slowly realized they weren't entirely alone. Sounds in the night. Things moved without being touched. And sometimes, a stranger, right inside the place they once called the safest. Turn off the lights and listen closely.